Jeffrey Dahmer, a name that sends chills down the spine. But how did he become one of America's most notorious serial killers? Born on May 21st, 1960, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Dahmer seemed like any other child at first, but as he grew older, there were signs of trouble. He became fascinated with dead animals, often dissecting roadkill in his backyard. This morbid curiosity was an early indicator of his dark inclinations. This was just the beginning. By his teenage years, Dahmer felt increasingly isolated. He struggled to fit in and often found himself on the fringes of social circles. He struggled with his sexuality and began drinking heavily, even in school. His alcohol abuse was a way to numb the pain and confusion he felt inside. His dark fantasies began to take shape. These thoughts were not just fleeting. They were persistent and grew more intense over time. In 1978, at the age of 18, Dahmer committed his first murder. This act was a turning point, marking the transition from fantasy to reality. His first victim was Stephen Hicks. Stephen Hicks' father, Richard, described his son as a deeply caring person. Hicks recently had graduated high school in Coventry Township, Ohio. He was hitchhiking to a rock concert in Chippewa Lake Park, Ohio, roughly 25 miles away, when Dahmer picked him up and brought him back to his parents' home. Hicks was just looking for a ride, unaware of the fate that awaited him. Dahmer dismembered Hicks' body, scattering the remains in his backyard. This gruesome act was meticulously planned and executed. This horrifying act marked the start of a gruesome killing spree. Dahmer's methods became more refined and his urges more uncontrollable. Dahmer's murders continued, each more brutal than the last. His victims were often young men, lured by promises of money or companionship. He lured young men to his home, where he would drug, strangle, and often cannibalize them. The horror didn't end with their deaths. It extended to what he did with their bodies. His apartment became a house of horrors, filled with dismembered body parts and gruesome trophies. It was a macabre collection that spoke volumes about his twisted mind. Despite several close calls with the law, Dahmer remained undetected for years. His ability to blend in and appear normal was his greatest asset. He was a master of deception, maintaining a facade of normalcy. Friends and neighbors had no idea of the monster living among them. But in 1991, his luck ran out. The walls of his double life began to close in. On July 22nd, 1991, Tracy Edwards escaped from Dahmer's clutches and flagged down to police officers. This brave act would finally bring Dahmer's reign of terror to an end. What they found in Dahmer's apartment shocked the world. The sheer scale of his atrocities was almost beyond comprehension. A refrigerator filled with human heads, photographs of dismembered bodies, and a drum containing acid used to dissolve remains. It was a scene straight out of a nightmare. Dahmer was arrested and later confessed to the murders of 17 young men. His confessions were chilling, revealing a mind consumed by darkness. The 17 victims of Dahmer named: Stephen Hicks, 18. Hicks was last seen June 18, 1978, though his remains were not discovered until 1991 after Dahmer confessed to killing him. Stephen Twomey, 28. Classmates remembered him as quiet but artistic. Twomey was last seen September 15, 1987. Jamie Dockstader, 14. Was nearly 6 feet tall. He was half Stockbridge and part Oneida, and liked to play pool and ride his bike. Dockstader was last seen January 16, 1988. Richard Guerrero, 25, hailed from a family of Mexican descent. His sister, Janie Hagen, immediately assumed he was dead. When he went missing in March 1988, Anthony Sears, 24, managed a baker's square in Milwaukee and was planning to celebrate. his recent promotion to manager with his family over Easter dinner, but he never showed. He was last seen March 25th, 1989. Ricky Beeks, 33, he'd been living with his half-sister, who took him in after he'd been released from prison and had a 10-year-old daughter who lived in Rockford, Illinois. He was last seen May 29th, 1990. Etta Smith, 28, he aspired to be a professional model. He was reported missing in June 1990, and his sister, Carolyn, received a call presumably from Dahmer in March of 1991 indicating that her brother was dead. Ernest Miller, 24, was about to start classes at an arts college in Chicago and hoped to become a professional dancer. He came to Milwaukee to visit relatives. He was last seen September 2nd, 1990. David Thomas, 23, was father to 2-year-old Portia Beanland when he disappeared. His ex-girlfriend, Chandra Beanland, said Thomas was a fun-loving guy with a penchant for hustling. Thomas was last seen September 24th, 1990. Curtis Straughter, 18, was a high school dropout who joined Gay Youth Milwaukee at age 15 and had a job as a nursing assistant that he lost shortly before he disappeared. He was last seen March 7th, 1991. Errol Lindsay, 19, was the youngest of 6 children and had left to get a key cut. April 7th, 1991, when he crossed paths with Dahmer. He had a job making plaster figures, according to one friend. Anthony Hughes, 31, was deaf, a condition brought on after a battle with pneumonia as an infant. Hughes was last seen May 24th, 1991. Conorak Synthesymphone, 14, is one of the most familiar in the case because of an incident involving Milwaukee police on May 27th, 1991, when Conorak Synthesymphone was returned to Dahmer by police after Dahmer convinced them that Synthesymphone was 19 and drunk, and the two were in a relationship. Matt Turner, 20, a native of Flint, Michigan, lived in Chicago and aspired to be a model. He met Dahmer after a gay pride parade at a Chicago bus station and agreed to ride back to Milwaukee with him. He was last seen June 30th, 1991. Jeremiah Weinberger, 23, a native of Puerto Rico, lived in Chicago and worked as a customer service representative for a video store. He encountered Dahmer in Chicago. The two men took a Greyhound bus back from Chicago to Milwaukee. Weinberger was last seen July 6, 1991. Oliver Lacey, 23. He had a 2-year-old child named Emmanuel and was engaged to be married. He went missing July 12, 1991, and was the first victim identified. Joseph Breithoft, 25. He had a wife and 3 children in Minnesota, with ages ranging from 2 to 7. He loved sports and fishing. He left for a job interview July 16, 1991, and never returned. He met Dahmer at a bus stop near the Marquette University campus and became Dahmer's final victim. His trial revealed the depths of his depravity, leaving the nation in shock. The courtroom was filled with a mix of horror, disbelief, and sorrow. On November 28, 1994, Dahmer was killed by a fellow inmate in prison. Bringing his horrifying story to an end, his death was as violent as his life had been. Jeffrey Dahmer's tale is a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk within. It's a story that forces us to confront the evil that can exist in the human soul. It's a story of a man whose monstrous actions will forever haunt our collective memory. The impact of his crimes continues to resonate, a grim chapter in the annals of true crime. If you're fascinated by true crime and the psychology behind it, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. There's always more to uncover and understand. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe. Remember, the world is full of mysteries, some darker than others.